Hey yo, Mark here for Mark's Max Muscle, and today we're yet again going to review one of the 8 mandatory poses. This list is almost complete with just the side chest remaining after this one, which is in fact the Rear Lat Spread. This is one of the better poses for sure. It displays the back development from top to bottom, as well as the glutes, hamstrings, and the all-important calves. So it really exposes the weaknesses of those front-dominant bodybuilders. And I don't think we'll see too many of those guys in this list, with a few exceptions, I'm sure. But anyway, without further ado, let's get started. And we begin with one of the all-time greats in bodybuilding, Dave Draper. I think he was pretty suited to the Rear Lat Spread. Take a look at a bodybuilder by the name of John Forbotnik. Here he is displaying his fairly wide lat spread. Now, have a look at the rear lat spread of one Sergio Oliva. This is quite impressive. And it's safe to say he's going to be a pretty hard man to touch in this list. The V-taper here, from head to toe, Sergio, definitely one of the best men in history ever to hit the rear lat spread. Here's the Austrian Oak, Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. Not the best pose for him, I don't think, but not bad nonetheless. Here Frank Zane is, he looks pretty good in the rear lat spread, I think. Not a bad little Christmas tree there, actually. Frank Zane, one of the all-time classics of bodybuilding. Now here's another one of the all-time greats, Franco Columbu. Look at the amount of meat that he packed back there. Unbelievable rear lat spread. Franco Columbu. He's going to be a hard man to touch in this list, I believe. Wow, look at that. Looks like a flying squirrel of some kind. Of course, Roy Callender here, a little bit later on in bodybuilding, displayed almost equally as low lat insertions. Not bad at all. Roy Callender. Here's Robbie Robinson. Now, I couldn't find too many pictures of him displaying the rear lat spread, but it's safe to say he had one of the best rear lat spreads of all time. Robbie Robinson, a true legend. And speaking of legends, have a look at Samir Banu. Anything displaying the back development, of course, Samir is going to fare quite well. And the rear lat spread is no exception. Here's Jorma Ratty. He actually made the cut for the rear double bicep, and also here in the rear lat spread. Not bad at all. This is Rich Gaspari. He had a pretty decent rear lat spread, I think. Not the best, but fairly solid nonetheless. Here's Edward Kowak, displaying his tremendously thick lat development. Not bad at all. Oh, take a look. It's the Ultimate Warrior. He makes the cut. Pretty impressive back development on the Warrior, actually. The best all time for any wrestler, really. Here's Lee Haney. Definitely for his time, Lee Haney had one of the best rear lat spreads. Not bad at all. Very low lat insertions, like Franco Columbu. Here's Mohamed Benaziza. Look how thickly developed his lower lats are. Not the widest, but probably the thickest of the lower lats. Perhaps Kai Greene. We'll see a little bit later on. Here's Andreas Munzur, one of my favorite bodybuilders from the 90s. Nice V-taper. Takes me in mind of a futuristic Frank Zane, perhaps. Hard to say. Mike Matarazzo here. Not the best in the way of lat development, but if you'll glance down at them calves, you'll see one of the most fully developed calves in the history of bodybuilding. Just very impressive. Not bad in the trap development as well. So I think he's worth putting on this list. Here's Sonny Schmidt. Not bad at all. He actually surprised me with his back development. He's pretty underrated, actually, I think. Now, take a look at Dorian Yates. I believe this is the best so far that we've seen in the way of back development. Just unbelievable. Of course, this is a training picture, so you gotta take into consideration. But here's a full-length picture of his rear lat spread, and it's safe to say Dorian's hasn't been touched as of late in the rear lat spread. Look at the trap development. It's unbelievable. And of course, look at the calves. Give Mike Matarazzo a run for his money in the calf department. And of course, he get better with age, I think. This pose. Here he is in, I think, 97. Look at the traps. I think they've grown. Dorian Yates, definitely a legend. Here's Kevin Levrone. Definitely not as impressive as Dorian Yates in the rear lat spread, but pretty suited to his physique, I think. Here he is doing battle with Sean Ray. Sean Ray, not the greatest in the rear lat spread, but I guess we can mention him. Of course, he was so good at some of the front shots that hard to give him any of these back shots. Here's another picture of Kevin Levrone. Pretty good, actually, in the rear lat spread. Now, here's a guy that a lot of people don't discuss in the greatest backs of all time, but he's displaying one of the best rear lat spreads. Here's Chris Cormier. One of my favorite bodybuilders from the 90s and the early 2000s. Pretty hard to touch in this pose, I think. Stand toe-to-toe with any man on the bodybuilding stage. I initially wasn't going to put this big man on this list, but take a look at those hamstrings. That's unbelievable. That's Nasser Al-Sambadi. And of course, he had a decent rear lat spread. Definitely not the best. But I think worth mentioning just on the merit of those unbelievable hamstrings. Have a look at the back development of Joel Stubbs. Tremendous flow here. Maybe a little bit weak in the leg department, but wow, what an incredible rear lat spread. Actually resembles a cobra head of some kind. Joel Stubbs. Now, behold the back of one Jean-Pierre Fuchs, or as I like to call him, Jean Badin Pierre Fuchs. Big Jean Badin, I believe, is underrated in this pose. And this may ruffle a few feathers here, but if you ask me, I think Jean Badin is scoring ahead of Dorian Yates in the rear lat spread. So I don't think Dorian Yates will be around at the end of this competition. I know there's a lot of fans of Dorian Yates, in particular of his rear lat spread. So what I did is I found an event where both men were competing, and I took a screenshot of both men's rear lat spreads. And here you go. You be the judge yourself. Now, there is a slight argument Dorian may be a little bit better conditioned. But I mean, Jean Badin, Pierre Fuchs, look at that lat spread. That's unbelievable. And he is dwarfing Dorian in the trap department, which is unheard of. Anyway, continue with the list. But don't be surprised when you don't see Dorian at the end. Here's big Mike Francois. Mike Francois, known for his back development. Judging by this picture here, you can see why. Mike Francois, definitely perhaps a forgotten legend in the sport of bodybuilding. Now, another forgotten legend. Have a look at Art Atwood. This back is just unbelievable. Resembles some sort of dinosaur. Just unbelievable. Now, potentially, genetically speaking, this is probably but now potentially one of the greatest backs in the history of bodybuilding. Unbelievable. How low the lats insert and how huge just everything is proportioned. Art Atwood. Dinosaur. Here's Orville Burke. He also, much like Joel Stubbs, resembles some sort of a cobra. You can see the eyeballs inserted in the upper lats. Very unique. Rear lat spread. Here's Big Gunther Schlerkampf. Big Gunther, probably not the best on this list, but I believe a very strong pose for this guy. I always liked this bodybuilder, Big Gunther. Now, have a look at the King. King Ronnie. Yeah, buddy. Now, of course, he's recognized for having the greatest back development of all time by a lot of people. And I'm no exception. This is an unbelievable rear lat spread. He was pretty consistent through the years, as you can see here. First picture a little earlier on in his career. Unlike the rear double bicep, Ronnie was pretty symmetrical in the rear lat spread. So I'm here to tell you, Ronnie Coleman, yeah buddy, he's going to be a very difficult man to touch in the rear lat spread. So let's carry on with the list. Here's Jay Cutler. He did battle against Big Ronnie for years. And he had a decent rear lat spread. I believe it was a little overrated. I was never a fan of his lower back. But always respected Jay Cutler. Now take a look at Big Marcus Ruhl. Probably not the strongest pose for Big Marcus, but he somehow always seems to make my mandatory pose lists. Big Marcus Ruhl. Now, take a look at Dennis Wolf. I believe this is a very strong pose, in particular for a back shot for this guy, as he's struggles in the rear double bicep, I believe. Big Dennis Wolf. Here's Dexter the Blade Jackson. True picture of perfection in the rear lat spread for sure. A little weak in the calf department, but everything else is just on spot and crisp. Very impressive rear lat spread. Here's Dennis the Menace James. Dennis James. I think this is a pretty strong pose for this guy. Not bad. Have a look at Kai Greene. Now, he definitely ranks high in the rear lat spread, but in my humbled opinion, he's a little weak in the trap department. But, I mean, without a doubt, look how low those lats insert. It's probably the lowest lats I've ever seen in the history of bodybuilding. Unbelievable. Kai Greene, definitely a living legend in the sport of bodybuilding. I don't think Kai was ever going to catch up to this guy in the rear lat spread, though. This is Phil Heath, the current IFBB Mr. Olympia champion. Look how deep and thick the traps are. Unbelievable. Looks like the Grand Canyon. There's another shot here. He gets more grainy and hard every year, I think. And look at the hamstring development. I must say, Phil Heath is definitely going to be a hard man to touch in this. It's going to be a head-to-head competition between him and Ronnie Coleman, I believe. But I'm going to review the pictures and always take into consideration the timeline as well. So we never do head-to-head comparisons with somebody from the 60s with nowadays athletes. Here's Big Rammy. Definitely trying to give Phil Heath a run for his money in the rear lat spread. And he's definitely doing a good job as far as width is concerned. But in my opinion, he's not quite able to catch up to Heath in the thickness of the trap development. But we'll see as the years move on. Take a look at Rooley Winkler, otherwise known as Boo Bunder. I believe it was Louis Marco that coined that phrase, Boo Bunder. If you haven't subscribed to Louis Marco's channel, I definitely highly recommend it. Anyway, Boo Bunder, a very impressive rear lat spread. Look how far those lats jet out He's very vascular. Here's Victor Martinez. He's a pretty solid rear lat spread, in my opinion. Nice little Christmas tree along with the nice big traps. Victor Martinez. A little bit underrated in the rear lat spread, I think. Here's Johnny O. Jackson. One of the strongest bodybuilders of all time. And he does a lot of those heavy deadlifts. And you can see it responds to the trap development for sure. It's definitely a little weaker in the lag region. Take a look at Cedric McMillan. Of course, my mandatory pose list would not be complete without this guy. And the word complete definitely resembles this guy's bodybuilding repertoire, as he can hit most, or if not all, of the mandatories. And with great precision, I might add. And with that, it is time to decide on a Marks Max Muscle Rear Lat Spread Champion. And here are my 4 finalists in chronological order. How could I not choose Sergio Oliva? I mean, this is the 1960s with back development like this, the likes of which the world has really never seen. So, of course, he was way ahead of his time. Next, we got big Jean-Baudin Pierre Fuchs. I mean, to be able to stand toe-to-toe and, in my opinion, beat Dorian Yates in the rear lat spread in the mid-90s, I mean, this is unheard of. And in my opinion, his rear lat spread is definitely underrated. Next, we got Ronnie Coleman. I mean, this back development is definitely going to be hard to touch in this competition. So, in my opinion, it's going to be a battle between Ronnie Coleman and this man right here, Phil Heath. I mean, as far as the lower lats are concerned, I got to give it to Heath. But look at that Christmas tree on Ronnie Coleman and the width of those lats. This is definitely a difficult decision, to say the very least. Of course, I'm drawn to the huge upper trap region of... Excuse me? Hold on a second. Are you sure? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm being told... Oh, here it is right here. There's an urgent message. Apparently. Looks official to me. And who said this? Ladies and gentlemen, apparently the IFBB is threatening to take legal action unless Franco Columbu is appointed rear lat spread champion. Anyway. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Franco Columbu has been appointed the Marks Max Muscle Rear Lat Spread Champion. Now, it's unfortunate that politics has reared its ugly head, but in bodybuilding, I guess you have to get used to that sort of thing. But Franco Columbu definitely is one of the top guys in this particular pose. Was he the best of all time? I don't know. It's hard to say. But he will remain the Marks Max Muscle Rear Lat Spread Champion. Well, that about does it for the rear lat spread. Now all that remains in my 8 mandatories is the classic side chest pose, so keep an eye out for that one. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you did, and that's it for now. This is Mark for Marks Max Muscle.